I'll go ahead and introduce our Herb Greene Teaching Fellow, René Peralta, who is going to give us an overview of the work that he's been doing for the last 2 years here as our first Herb Greene Teaching Fellow here at OU. So welcome, René. Take it away.
Thank you. Can you all see my screen just to make sure? Yes? Excellent. Yes. So I'm going to minimize so I'm like Stephanie says, I am really honored to be the first Herb Greene Teaching Fellow here at the university. And I'm going to go a little bit further back on my career because I think that there was never a kind of introductory sort of lecture or view of things that I did when I came in, and I basically hit the ground and started running, working. So for those of you that might still, kind of wonder what I do, this is I'm going to try to do that. So it's I had a lot of fun putting this together. I really hope you enjoy it. Let's see here. All right, I'm going to start way back. So I was born in 1968, which I think was the greatest year in the 20th century. Not because I was born, but there was a lot of interesting things happening along the world during that year. Even books have been written about it. But this is on the top, it's the city of Tijuana. The 60s for Tijuana, when I was born, changed completely. It was a time when the city was, according to the Mexican government, too American, and they wanted to turn it into a much more Mexican city, Mexicanize it a little bit more. And so they did these huge projects at the border, part of a national border project where they created new infrastructure. And so when I was a kid, I saw a lot of these projects coming up, and I saw the city change completely. I mean, huge infrastructure, as you'll see, is the Tijuana River Channel. This was a building that was done by a disciple of Candela. You can see by the shells. There was it's the port of entry in the city, and it's called Puente Mexico. It's no longer there. They demolished it a few years ago. Unfortunately, I was part of the group that was trying to defend it. But of course, we did not succeed, unfortunately, but it was a great, beautiful building. And, it was a really nice time. It was a time when also the city was known because of Herb Albert and his boys, right? The Tijuana Brass, and I'm sure all of you know a lot of his songs, and you know that Herb Albert or any of the guys were not from Tijuana. They were from LA. And they used to come down here, have fun, go to the bullfights, and that's how Herb Albert sort of got the idea of not only the name but also the sound. So it was a very interesting time. It was during the 60s and the 70s when I grew up in the city, and then that's me when I was a kid. A cute kid. I don't know what happened. Anyway, I became an architect because I couldn't become a musician. My father never let me be a musician. My father was a jazz pianist. He's the one on the bottom left. My uncle, his brother, was also a jazz pianist. He's the one on the bottom right. And my grandfather was a musician as well. You can see him there. He was I think he was a trumpet player. And this is the old racetrack orchestra probably from the 1920s, or racetrack and casino, one of the famous casinos in Tijuana. So I come from this kind of musical family, and my father at the end decided that his sons should study something much more appropriate. I think that's what the music scene back then in the 50s and the 60s, I guess, was a very tough one, especially for young people. So anyway, these are that's who I grew up with, around a lot of music and musicians, especially a lot of jazz at the time. This is my family, as you all know. Monica, who's now here with me, came down last night. I have two beautiful daughters, and I'm glad they look like Monica and not like me. So it's Renee and Angela. Renee has already graduated from university, and Angela is studying film in Cal State Northridge. And then we have our Sue, which is 4 cats and 2 dogs, and they're all at home right now. So great pets, especially Paco, who likes to wear sunglasses. One of the turning points, I think, in my development as an architect, or development as a in architectural academia or the discipline, was attending the Architectural Association from 1995 to 1996. Here's a top photo with some of my colleagues back then. And we did a lot of interesting work. It was basically directed by Jeffrey Kipnis and Bahram Shardel, an Iranian architect. And we did a lot of, let's say, theoretical work, you might say, but we also were right in the beginning of the digital kind of realm of things in architecture. And so we were experimenting with a lot of, let's say, digital design, you might say, in that sense. I remember back then that we were using Form C and MicroStation and other software that have kind of gone away a little bit. But it was really interesting time, and I learned a lot of things in relationship to architectural theory, the practice in the 1990s, which was a lot of it was very formal. So I think that still remains a little bit in what I do and what I think. But coming back to Tijuana has really, again, when I came back to Tijuana, really changed my perspective of things as well, in kind of the real world where I would live. But also coming back, I had the opportunity to work for a few years with the firm Spurlock Poirier, and one of the major projects that I did with them was the Getty Garden, and it was a great experience because with Andrew Spurlock and Marty Poirier, I really learned a lot about landscape architecture, about planning in an environmental way as well. But this project really also showed me that connection between art and architecture through the work of Robert Irwin, who was the one who designed the garden. And so that I had so much lessons in this job. And I was not designing anything. I was actually doing construction documents for all construction details for all the steel and all the custom bridges and everything was custom in this project. So I was that path, I detailed the whole thing. And so it was, even though I was doing technical drawings, which also was very important, I really learned a lot from being around the people who were involved in this project. So this is a very interesting and beautiful project. I might have other thoughts about the building, but the garden is amazing. Some of the when I finished Spurlock Poirier, I kind of still do different things. I have before coming, of course, to OU, I had 2 publications. One of them is Here's Tijuana and Aquí Tijuana, 2 books. Well, one because one is in English and one is in Spanish, but it's the same book basically. Published by Black Dog in London, and I did it with Fiamma Montesemolo, who's a anthropologist, and Heriberto Yepes, who's a writer. So it was a three-disciplinary or a multidisciplinary book about the city. And it's one of those books that leaves kind of the definition open of what the city is about. Very much like the books that I put in the picture on the bottom left, where there's no kind of that meta narrative, but it's basically open for anybody who looks at it and get their own perspective of what the city is about, and that's what we try to do. And I think for us, it's been very successful. It's been used in many um, sort of classes in cultural anthropology, in other universities, et cetera, et cetera. So for us, it's been a very successful now, but it's been quite a while now, 2006. And you can still buy it on Amazon. The other publication that I was able to edit, and it was an honor to do it with Tito Alegria, who was one of our lecturers this Tuesday in our Latin American class. And it was a document that was re-edited. That was originally prepared by Donald Apperjar and Kevin Lynch. And this was kind of the first 1974. We re-edited the book in 2018, sorry. And it basically, when the importance of this document is sort of one of the first books that starts to talk about the region as a shared geography. When I mean the region, I mean the US-Mexico border, Tijuana, San Diego. And so it's a very important book because it starts to talk about binational planning, and something that still we don't get it. I mean, we're still trying to understand that that's important. Anyway, so that's also another publication that I think was very fun to work with. All these books kind of took 2 years to make, approximately. Just before coming to OU, I finished a report for a association called Metropolis, which is an association of cities around the world. And I edited a report on like the future of transportation or sustainable transportation in 4 cities: Medellin, Rosario, Tijuana, of course, and Quito. And this was with the city of Tijuana. So I was a consultant for the city of Tijuana and put this together along with Michelle Araceli Rubio. And we put this document together, and it was very, very interesting document to work on, because I had the opportunity to talk to and see the transportation initiatives of these 4 different cities in Latin America. So that's up on their website. It did not get printed, but I think it's only English and Spanish PDF versions. I have an office, as you now see. Our office is in Genetica. We've had it since 2000. Right after I left Spurlock Portier, I started teaching and opening an office in Tijuana with Monica. Of course, Monica has a background in environmental design and in commercial and interiors, and I do some of the work of architecture and urban design that comes into the practice. So we've been added, even though we've done different things. Sometimes we're not together doing stuff, but the spirit of the office is open. One of the projects that we did, the office has different types of projects, not very client-based, but I would say mostly project-based, and also do a lot of installations and things in museums. This is one of the 2 projects that we did, one for the San Diego Museum of Contemporary Art in 2006, and the Children's Museum in 2008, which was the same piece. Different configuration, got bigger, but it was this whole installation about sort of fence, talking about the fence in relationship maybe to the US-Mexico border, but also talking about windows and how people sort of protect themselves with these grills, and the porosity, and thinking about transparency, all these things, and how it plays out as an effect at the end with light. And that was our project for these 2 for these two installations. On the left, of course, is just a museum. On the right, the children's museum was much more active because it was a little theater scape, you might say, for children to play under it. And then they sent me that picture that somebody got married. They wanted to, they I guess they rented the museum and decided to get married on their structure. So I'm glad they do that, and I hope they're still married. Okay. Very few clients. Some of our clients are our friends. This is a house we did in Tijuana in 2018 for a friend of ours who is a demographer. She's a researcher at the main think tank, a national think tank here there in Tijuana, and she's from France, and she's been living in Tijuana now for more than 25 years. And she finally said, "I'm going to stay here and build a house." And so she bought this beautiful lot that was on a hill, and we decided to build her house for her with the special needs. And one of them was to have this huge balcony for parties. And so we did that. We checked that little box off. But the house is centered around this centered around the entry courtyard, which when we took the pictures, it was just built, but now there's a huge, beautiful tree in the middle, and there's much more landscape. So it's really nice, but everything's sort of kind of works around the house. And we got an AIA award for the house in 2019. So these are some pictures of the house. These are other speculative projects or projects that came down to the office that we started working on. The project on the top is basically, just a project on roofs. The whole idea with the client was he has this 1970s kind of typical suburban house. We're just wondering and thinking about how can we change it. There's something here. How can we change it basically through the roofscape in a way, And then other clients, other projects, we went through a series of, you could see a lot of kind of the AA ideas, striation, some kind of monolith formal stuff, aggregation of boxes, sort of architecture of landscape or these scapes, roofscapes in this case. And so these things carry over. Let's see. Oops, sorry, went back. This is another project that we did, a kind of an infill project in one of the a neighborhood where I used to when I grew up, but it was an infill project. Sort of how to be. It was a difficult site because you had these two buildings, and they wanted to connect, and so we did this piece that would just kind of be the connector, you might say, right? So we were again working a lot with the folding of the forms, et cetera. So again, this is kind of the stuff that we wanted to work on. My computer's just a little slow. Let me see, just make sure that I'm not missing anything. And then also I directed the Master of Architecture at a Master of Architecture for 3 years at Woodbury University. And it was called Landscape Urbanism. And so I made the whole program myself, and was really interested in this kind of, connection of landscape art, urbanism, and Latin America. And so for 3 years, we took students to Peru, to Panama, to Mexico City, and had them work on different projects. We did a lot of things. We did some conceptual stuff, and like the plans on the top are the space syntax analysis that we were doing on Lima, and on the bottom, a much more kind of real project with the thesis of one of my students who was working on resolving the heat island effects in the community of Barrio Logan, which is a low-income community in San Diego. And because these heat islands were and the sort of the contamination in the air were happening really close to the elementary schools around there. And so he did this project in order to map these, but also to suggest some changes through landscape for the school. So it was a great program. It was part of a grant, so it only lasted 3 years. But yeah, hopefully we'll revive it somewhere again. Hint, hint. One of the, I guess the crown project of the L+U program was going to Peru with the students and doing a video documentary on Previ, which is one of the 1960s, late 60s, early 70s multi-housing project that was done by many famous architects that included many famous architects in its planning. Sterling, Christopher Alexander, you name it. There was whoever in the 70s was really big and around the world. They produced a series of prototypical houses for this community. And so we went back, 45 years later, and because the houses were changed now by the people living there, we did this video about how the architects felt and how the people felt about the changes. And we were able to, we published it, put it online, and then the MoMA asked us if they could put it on their show, the big show they had on Latin America, called Latin American Construction. So we were really, really happy to have it be part of that huge, enormous, and important show on American and Latin American architecture in New York. So that was really, really nice. And for the students, it was, of course, great. How am I doing on time?
You're good.
And she says
You're
I'm good.
20 minutes in.
Okay. We also, as you know, we work for Hyperloop. Well, we won a competition first before we started doing some consulting. We won the competition called Vision for America. This was a worldwide competition to think about how the Hyperloop system, transportation system, would, let's say, trigger economic development in certain areas of the world. And from about 3,000 entries, we were the finalist in the group of 11 that was called Vision for America. And ours, you can see we were number 5, Hyperloop West. And we were the only, well, not the second or one first, I think we were the first one to think about a cross-border Hyperloop. And so it was a very interesting little research project that we did. I mean, we did not design any sort of infrastructure. We actually designed the economic and development of that could happen if this infrastructure and if this transportation system came to the border area. And there was basically it's a Hyperloop that goes from the city of Ensenada to Los Angeles. Ensenada, it's about 2 hours from Tijuana south. And that usually takes about a 5-hour trip crossing the border. And in a Hyperloop, you could do it in 18 minutes. So we say, wow, I mean, people now can live across the border. People can go study on both sides of the border. There was a lot of things that was good about this, not only the time that you would save. Some experiments that we've done with material. We designed our own brick in Tecate. This is where our third-year students are doing their project. Tecate is known for making brick for a long time and making terracotta tiles. They've been doing that since the beginning of the 20th century. And so we went one day, we had an idea, we had a little project, and we went and to a manufacturer and said, hey, can you build us can you sort of produce this brick for us? And we designed it very simple. And then we just started to play with it, and we did it we put it on some facades. So you can see it in the Vinoteca, which is a nice little wine bar in Tecate, and some of the walls around there. So this was this is some of the great things you can do in Mexico, or you can do in Tijuana and Tecate, where you could just go and do these and it doesn't cost you a lot, you know. I mean, we never did patent it or anything. I mean, I know the guy who's now selling these, and you probably see him in some home in Carlsbad or something. But yeah, but it was great just to go there, do it, and you know, no paperwork, you know, just go ahead and do it. Like I said, we done a lot of installations in museums. We worked on the Seoul Biennale. I was the director for the Tijuana San Diego little pavilion, and so we did an exhibition about contemporary, the contemporary border condition, from its geographical to its economical, architectural, urban, you know, all these themes together in these 2 rooms in the city of Seoul. So it was a very interesting project for us as well, because you know, they published some great books on the Biennale, and this is an ongoing project still, as you'll see later. Our work with Esperanza, as you'll know, with the foundation, some of you already know, which is a nonprofit that helps people build dignified housing. But it has so many, so many ways of thinking of how to create community ties by using housing as a kind of excuse, you might say, right, to produce a kind of community bond. And so, you know, the whole thing is based on the community coming together and creating savings funds for the houses, volunteers that come from all over the world to help us build the houses. People make their own blocks, so that's another way that people also get participate. And then, of course, the building is also participatory. So we've been working with Esperanza for quite a while now, and trying to influence all the steps and try to think about new ways of doing it. New ways of doing community meetings, using technology, new ways, thinking of maybe producing a better block. I mean, things like that. And so we're really happy and honored to be part of this institution. You know, this is, I'm not going to go through this graph, but this is their program flow diagram. Thanks for Morgan McCurdy for redoing it for me. But you can see it's 4 parts, and the last part is on the right is the building of the house. So there's a lot of things that happen before the architecture begins. And I think that is important to understand, that there's a whole process. Some foundations come in and just do the housing, but now you have to really understand community and try to work with them. And after the housing, they continue a community, they continue a group. So that's great. So, you know, this is some of the things that we do. They're not spectacular houses, like, you know, with a capital A, architecture with a capital A, because the families participate in the design of them, which is great, right? And we help them. We are the foundation helps them technically, you know, to make sure they're safe and waterproof and all these things. So it's interesting. Some numbers down there of how many homes we've built already throughout the, what is it, 30 years of the foundation. There's a special project that they're doing. Now they have a site. They're going to do these 70 homes. We didn't do the planning for this, but we are doing the community center, which is this 5-fingered community center that we decided to do it like that because we wanted the community center to look out to the other parts of the community, the other parts of the area where we're not working, because to make them feel that they're also part of who we are. So it's kind of an open hand kind of thing, almost like a Corbusier open hand. But anyway, so that's a project that we worked on. This is just a very simple schematic design project and a model and a few renderings, but we'll continue hopefully build this pretty soon. The teaching as well, as you know, I'm very interested in Tijuana and the urban context. There's been so many changes in the city. This is the canal. I brought students to the city to teach. I did it at WashU. I did a 3-year studio. It's called the Tijuana Studio. This is a WashU in St. Louis with students from landscape architecture, urban design, and architecture. And we would come here and just tackle the really difficult projects. You know, how do you deal with, you know, an infrastructure, a canal that at the end of the canal, there is informal people living in there. I mean, what do you do? How do you plan the canal for the future? What do you do with people? And how do you deal, you know, with these issues? And so, you know, this is, you have manufacturing plants that come from all over the world, but then you have also poverty, even though they're supposed to create more jobs. And so all these things, and there's the environmental issues. So I'm not going to show a lot of projects, just, you know, but those are the themes that we worked on, and the students were able to relate and kind of think very carefully how all the pieces should move together without, you know, taking anybody out, or and trying to be sensible also of the social cultural aspects of projects like this. So we had a great year. We had great 3 years that ran. I think then WashU decided to go to Asia and do other their projects. Speaking of the river, I worked on a. This was one of those projects that I was with some students, and you know what, one of those nights that just you say, hey, why don't we just put some solar panels on the canal? And you know, you go quickly to your desk and just Photoshop it on top of a Google Earth image, and then it's in the LA Times, you know, and so people are starting to ask, does this work? You know, is it gonna? And so I got a lot of press for that, and then okay, so now let's fix the water, that little channel of water that is on there that's contaminating the beach. So we went to UCSD and worked with a scientist there, a Scripps scientist, on how to use algae to actually clean the water, but also after that, use the algae to, you know, produce benefits. Of course, besides the carbon sequestration, is you can produce food, biomass, and even, you know, later it'll be efficient or cheap enough to produce fuel. So that was the idea. And so we started to work on this more. We did the calculations. We started to explain to people about the heat island effect of the canal, how it could become an infrastructure and a social infrastructure as well. And so the project started to become much more real little by little. I mean, it's still kind of in that capacity, but there's always a new version of the Tijuana River Canal. And so that's it would become the biggest solar farm in the country if we could do that. So OU. So I came to OU thinking, well, there was I had to come with an idea for a research project, and I had been talking to a friend of mine, Dr. Ivan Peshkov, for a while about doing a comparative analysis of borders. And we decided to maybe think about doing one between San Diego, Tijuana, and Hong Kong, Shenzhen. He's an expert in those borders over there. He's a sociologist, but very interested in sort of kind of a the urban realm, of course, as well. So I said to Ivan, look, I'm here at OU. This is a great institution. I think we could pull it off. And he was very excited. And we started to do these workshops quickly before going to China, and then COVID hit. And everything sort of stopped. And even for him, it was very difficult because he was teaching in Moscow, and he had to go back to Poland. And, so it was very difficult. So the project kind of stayed in this, you know, pause for a while. We did another Zoom workshop with other experts talking about the cities. We're still trying to do the Chinese Hong Kong Zoom workshops, which is just talking to people of the area, experts of the area, and telling us about border conditions and border life, border economies, and things like that. And at the end, we didn't really know what we were going to produce. I mean, we might produce an exhibition or we might produce a paper, but it was interesting to study these two really interesting borders and see how they're similar or different. And so that's, and of course I was able to get a PRE grant for that, which I'm really grateful. And I hope, you know, to finish this, and I hope you see an output from this soon. Also, right when I came, there was the School of Thought, which is an amazing event that Stephanie put together in company. And it was also great for me because I met Gregory Marinic and Pablo Meninato there. And, having some drinks at the bar, we were starting to talk about what we did. And well, I landed a chapter in their next book, Informality in the City, Theories, Actions, and Interventions, which is coming out this year. So that was another great thing about being in OU, how I started to see all these opportunities and seizing these opportunities as much as possible. Of course, again, this was before COVID, but again, it was really, really amazing to be part of this in this way. So I thank you so much for putting this together. And then, tapping into the great faculty here at the university, I got an invitation from a friend who's a director at Sangmyung University in Seoul to do a workshop. So I invited Ken because it was part of I think of what the workshop wanted to be. It was a kind of a digital workshop. It was called the Icarus workshop because it was about this wearable that would help people, to breathe better. And we weren't even in COVID times yet, and we were thinking about masks. It was 2 weeks before. But anyway, they produce a lot of things for the body, of course, in theory and in drawing, using these, the computational methods, etc. And so it was a great trip that we did with Ken and all the resources and people that are here at the school and at the college. That really makes this place for me great. Then I started teaching third year in my first semester, and really enjoyed it. I in the first semester, I basically came in and helped out with third year. I think Dr. Lifitian, I think she was the one who was responsible for the studios, and had some great students. Had some very talented students. And I'm just putting here 2 examples, but there were many more examples. Of course, just as for the brevity of time. And we did. I remember that there was this kind of a yoga sort of retreat, kind of building in a heavily treed wood landscape site near the school. So a lot of great work came out from that, and that was my first sort of introduction to the student body of the school. Later, I got to sort of direct more one of the studios with. I did the Hyperloop studio, since I had that relationship with Hyperloop already. I decided to call Hyperloop and say, "Hey, can my students work on a hypothetical station?" And it was great. We were about to go to Hyperloop in LA, and of course, we had to end that trip in March 2020. But students are still produce a lot of great work and a lot of theoretical work about what the future of transportation could be, because these were designs that were supposed to be in 30 years or something like that. So we had some great, interesting projects from a lot of the students, very, very talented students in third year. And then we showed these, we sent these to Hyperloop as well. And they were also impressed by the thinking and some of the quality of the work that the students were doing, and how it matched kind of their idea of what the future of transportation might look like. So that was really, really awesome. How am I doing? Am I good? I got 20 minutes. All right. Then I proposed another studio for third year, which was the culinary. There's been a whole culinary arts movement in Tijuana, And so I was really interested to see how we can use that as a brief and think about food and think about where we get our food, and students starting to do the research and understanding that how the whole system of how we get our food here in the United States, where it comes from, what is its carbon footprint, and all these things. And they made these great research projects at the beginning, and also some great architectural projects that had to do with a culinary school in here in on campus. So again, great projects, and I really enjoyed bringing a little bit of what I of my experience in my context to the school. Right now, and we are in the time frame of this class. This has been a great seminar that I was able to put together for the Latin American Architecture and Urban Development Systems. We finished all our lectures. This Tuesday with Tito Alegría was the last one, but it's just been great to have all these people, experts from all these cities, really come and talk to us for an hour about certain conditions. I mean, like from housing to urbanism to film. So many perspectives besides the one that we read or look at in class. And, we get to look at beautiful buildings like the Clorinto Testa Bank in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, but also reminded us, and this is interesting to know, that OU graduates out there also are part of the history and legacy of Latin American architecture, like Alejandro Pietri, who was an OU graduate and did amazing work in Venezuela. And of course, Violeta Atum, you guys know that because it's been in the Renegades show, but she was also an OU graduate from Peru. So these amazing graduates from University of Oklahoma also come up a lot in these conversations. So it was really great to connect that. And currently, well, I'm still tapping into the great sort of resources that the school has, and we're trying to do this project with Professor Deborah Richards for the Italian pavilion. It's a virtual pavilion, and we're trying to create a small video presentation on community work and technology. I think that's the kind of best way I could sum it up. So hopefully we'll get that done in a few weeks, so that it's ready for the Biennale. So I'm really glad that Professor Richards is doing all that work here in Oklahoma, and it really helped. Again, like happened with Ken, sort of to make this, to have this sort of really cool collaboration. Yeah. Let's see. And many things have happened while I've been here, of course, and try to make the most of it during this COVID crisis. Worked on some collaborations and on exhibitions, lectured. That's a lecture poster for Ohio State University, which I think is terrible. Can't even read it. But anyway, it's I did lecture. I'm working, like I said, on the exhibition in Seoul. I'm working on a little book there called Living Border, putting all the exhibition material together. And only one book has come out, and the city has it. So I need to produce this as a bigger print. And I've done, of course, now with Zoom, I've done a lot of talks, some in Mexico City, in La Salle, Anahuac. I did one in Ensenada on verticality, et cetera, et cetera. So I've been keeping busy, also doing things that I enjoy, of course, as well as teaching as well, and being part of the OU community. So that is what I've done in my last 2 years. Thank you. Oh, I did in record time.
Thank you, Renee. That was such a wonderful tour from really 1968 until the present moment. What a pleasure. And yeah, just incredible like story, and yeah, I feel like we learned so much more about you and your life's work, really. Thank you. I'm going to open it up now to questions from your students or from our colleagues here.
Let me see here.
And I always have questions, but I'm
Listen.
going to wait and let someone else go first.
So René, here's Andres. What's next?
What's next?
Yes, the next chapter. Any?
I'm still trying to figure that one out. So, you might see me around, you might not. But I'm a friend of mine told me, I'm the gypsy architect. I'm the gypsy professor. I'm just running around everywhere and I never stay put. And I think I've enjoyed it a lot. I've met a lot of interesting people, and every place that I go is special because it's a place that lets me do the things or let me share things that I like to do. And I think if I continue to find different places that let me do that, I mean, that's something that I could do until Monica says stop traveling. But yeah, there's a few things, and for this year, we'll see how things open with now that COVID, people are getting vaccinated, and see where I'm going to be. Maybe some projects might come back because a lot of some projects that we had in the office, of course, stopped. And so hopefully those come back. Then I have work in the office and things like that. So yeah, and continue doing finishing that book on the living border. I hope, and yeah, kind of that's.
And we're
René,
hoping he might stick around, but we haven't figured that out yet exactly.
René, I would like you to share your story about how you really got into architecture.
Yeah,
That's one of the best stories I've heard.
there's a cigar story there.
Sorry, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, I was telling Dave that, like I said at the beginning, I never thought of becoming an architect. Like I really wanted to be a musician, but I mean, that was off the table. And so I went to school, and I was I think I was in junior college, and I was studying to be a physical therapist. And one day, a friend of mine who was studying architecture said, "Hey, do you want to go to lunch?" And I said, "Sure." He says, "Well, just go to the studio, pick me up, and then we'll go from there." So I go, and I see him, and he's coloring in a plan. And he says, "Here, take a pencil and help me finish color this thing." And I started coloring the plan, and I really liked it, and I really liked to draw it. And so next semester, I took a class in drawing, and then from there, I just moved to architecture. I just, to make it short, I just started architecture because of that guy. And my friend who was studying architecture, he went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, but he studied dairy sciences. He didn't even study architecture. So that's sort of weird. So anyway, and that's where I met Monica, of course, in the studios, and that were some of my first drawing classes.
Well, René, I'd like to be a gypsy architect too, and I've gotten to travel to Africa for quite a few things. But I need you to figure out, or we can talk about how we can get aging in place, because every place changes and how they age in place, and I think border aging in place might be a good thing to study. So
Oh
how
yeah,
cities
especially,
transition. So let's
yes,
talk about it.
definitely. Especially with a lot of older Americans who live in San Diego and might not afford to live there, are going down to south of the border to live in communities. And
Yeah,
some communities are just for people who go down there just to
retire.
live together. So yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Other questions, guys?
I'd just like to congratulate René for his work in Oklahoma.
Alex is a good friend of mine. He's a collaborator in Hyperloop and many other projects, especially, and he's the guy responsible for bringing us to Venice. So I want to thank Alex for being here. He's a big part of, of what's going on at the border in Tijuana, new ways of thinking. So in doing great work. So thanks, Alex.
Thank you, René. Enjoy it. I hope we see you more over here, but if you decide to do whatever you want, we miss you a lot. But thankfully, COVID was around in a weird way, because we couldn't have seen each other that much but we do miss you. We miss you a lot. And you're an important intellectual force in the region. And I know you're still present, but we do miss you. And I'm glad that everything's going extremely well with you in Oklahoma.
Thank you.
That's so lovely. Lee has her hand up.
I do. I want to really thank René for sharing his talents with the students, with me, with the faculty that we shared that studio with. He brought such a breadth of experience and then some really insightful elements to really, infuse that site design and research component into that studio that we will carry forward forever. So thank you.
Lee. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure working with you in the studios.
That's lovely. And Marjorie, you put something in the chat. What was that? You want to share?
Oh, thank you. I just, I'm in a very public place. Excuse me. Life happens. But I so enjoyed your presentation. But I didn't want you not to know how much I enjoyed your warmth, warm presence whenever I interacted with you, your wonderful spirit of camaraderie in your emails to all of us to participate in things, and your kindness. I know these are soft skills. You usually look for high technical professional, but I wanted you to know it mattered to me of your presence here. Yes.
Thank you, Marjorie. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Other questions? I have a super nerdy question, René.
Yes.
I want to know about that housing project, Previ. Like, what happened to it when you went back to that housing project? Were the people happy with it 40 years later, or what was it like?
Yes, yeah, you can find just before I tell you, but you can find the video on Arch Daily. They just type in Previ 45 years later, and it'll show up. But really, what's interesting because the Previ project began as a project between Peru and the UN. And this was when President Belaunte from Peru, who was an architect, and so he was very interested in sort of urban planning and creating experimental housing, etc. And then the military junta hit, and so right at the middle of this project, everything stopped. And so the idea was that the famous architects would design the houses, they would have the plans in an office, and then when the families were ready to add another story, they would go and see the plans by the famous architect and design the house or the addition as they said. But that office never really existed because of the military junta, and the government didn't care anymore about Previ. And so the people started to build years later to build the houses as they wished. And so it's a hybrid, right? It's a hybrid about the architectural top-down design with a kind of bottom-up sort of city and informality, and you put those two together. But the planning is exceptional, and it's a all pedestrian community, which is beautiful. But anyway, and so you go 45 years later and you ask the Peruvian architects from, I went to the National University and I said, what do you think about Previ? And they will say like, what? I mean, like, what are you talking about? And you know, and I said, no, Previ, this beautiful project that was done in the 60s, they totally forgot about it. They didn't care about it, right? So then I went to Previ itself and I started to talk to the residents of Previ, and they were so happy to be living there because a lot of them who went there in the 70s now were older, and they said, you know, they said, this is great for us to grow old. Like, you know, David was saying, you know, this is a great, it's quiet, it's nice, it's peaceful. There are no cars, children can play in the street. We built this little by little. So there was this debate, right, between the citizens living there and the purist architects who wanted things to have done exactly like the architect designed it. So that's the video is about that conflict.
Oh, I can't wait to watch that.
So it's only 10 minutes, but it's interesting what they say, you know. And at the end, I think one of the architects sums it up really nicely. He says, there's no good or bad here. There's only an evolution. And I think that's how we end the video. But I think so. It evolved into something that it had to happen. I mean, based on all the other sort of you know, political unrest and things that were going on in the country. So it's and nobody really paid attention to Previ, and some Peruvian architect says that I stole the idea because when it was in MoMA, they finally started to pay attention to it again.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, look, you guys had that nugget there. You never did anything with it. I'm taking it.
Well, it sounds like it was essentially like incremental housing before we started calling it that.
Oh yeah, this was way before Alejandro Aravena and all these people who were doing incremental housing. Yeah, and it's built. I mean, like I said, it was finished by the people themselves, but there are about 500 homes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So interesting. How about students? You guys must have some questions for René.
I have a question, but it's not that deep. Where are the cats? You never told us about the cats.
Where's the cat?
Yeah, because I've heard your dog barking, but you've never told us you had cats.
Oh yeah,
They don't get it.
they don't usually go to the office, except one sometimes gets in the office, and that's the cat that I own. And it's called Mini Jossie, and so I call her my secretary. So when she gets in the office, I'm to tell Monica, hey, the secretary's in here, get her out. But
All over the lap.
yeah, they're usually, you know, their cats are just laying around, sleeping all day. Right. All right. Thanks for being here, everybody, and I'm glad you have this opportunity to show a little bit of, you know, where I come from, what I do, what I did, and what I'm trying to do. And it's been a pleasure for me to be the Herb Greene Teaching Fellow. It's really it has. I'll tell you the truth, it has helped me so much in my career to be here. And not only learning from my colleagues, learning from you, a lot of the help from and advice from Stephanie, and being in Norman, in such different place in Tijuana, also has allowed me to sort of rethink a lot of things and pay attention to things that I had just had put aside. And so it has been a great experience for me. And I think whoever becomes a fellow again, I think they should take advantage of all the possibilities while you're here in the 2 years, because they go really fast. But it's from its context to its people and the opportunities, everything from other classes, grants, and things like that. So yeah, for me, it's been a pleasure, and I want to thank everybody.
Thank you, Renee. We feel so lucky, and I feel like we just hit the jackpot with our first Herb Greene Fellow, and all those to come will have such big shoes to fill, both in terms of like intellectual interest and work, and in terms of just how you've become such a special part of our community. And I think we saw that today, like you've just connected so beautifully with everyone in so many ways. We really, really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, okay, well, I'll let you guys.
All right.
Go.
And we'll take off so you have a few minutes with your students now, because we know we are actually invading your class. So thank you, Renee. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Guys.
See you guys later. All right. Let me. All right. Well, guys, thank you very much for being here. I had to, end it with some kind of presentation and lecture. These 2 years I've been here with the school. You guys have any questions on what I showed? I'll open it up.
What are some projects you've done with your wife? Or Monica, sorry, I don't know.
Most of the projects that are done under what is Generica. So like the house that did you see the house that we built in 2018? Those I do with Monica. So she's part of the process in many ways, in different points. So even if I'm writing an article or writing for something, she's my editor. And I throw things at her and see what she thinks. Not literally, but and so there's always something. Even in school, I mean, when I'm teaching anything that has to do with the architectural programming and things like that, I take a lot from what she does, that's her expertise, and use that and try to use it in class, etc. So we kind of always working together, even though it's not a physical project sometimes. But that's the relationship of working. But most of the time, I'm the one in the office. Any other question?
In the photos of Casa Cubes, who's the girl just staring out the sliding door?
It's the photographer who took the shots brought a model. Okay,
I was like, because it's like just one picture that this person is standing in, and it's all kind of sketchy.
Yeah, she just and then the one in the balcony, it's the model, that was invited by the photographer and Monica, my wife, and that's and then the rest is the other girl kind of posing there for, I don't know, for scale or for color, because it's a White House. But kind of a magazine kind-ish thing. So, and those are the photos we sent to the AIA for the competition. So it worked.
One other question about that house. Did you build into the side of the hill, or did you build up the where all the green roof kind of area? Is that actually just a hill that you kind of closed around and stuff, or did you actually infill it with soil and dirt and stuff like that?
Yeah.